Welcome to my channel, The Magic of Java. This is an extract from my second book, The Magic Sugar from Java. It's a novel. It reflects my experience of falling in love with Indonesia and falling in love with an Indonesian lady and slowly recognising that she has been taken from me either through black magic or simple criminality. Or is it simply my descent into madness? Whatever, it's still a novel. Any resemblance to real people is unintentional. But of course it's based on my experience. And yes, it's based on people I know. But amalgamations or caricatures of them. I do mention real celebrities and hope they will forgive me, along with any of my family and friends who believe that they have identified themselves. You're a Muslim now. Since getting to Gunung Kidul from Jimba, I had not been aware of the presence of Mawar's mother nor Bob in our home, and I had not been to see her mother's grave for fear of bringing a random ghost back to the house with me. Not with Mawar still somewhat insecure. Mawar had not dreamt about her mother since her mother had let her know that she was displeased with her. Furthermore, Putri had told us that Maddie's mother was in paradise now, or Mecca as Putri put it. So when I became aware of Mawar's mother in our house with Bob, I was both relieved and frightened that it was a bad omen. The mother and Bob reassured me that everything is all right. But nevertheless, I didn't know if I could trust my now questionable powers. I ought to, as every time I pray, I am now told that everything will be all right, whereas it was not long ago that I would receive warnings when things weren't going to be positive, and they were always correct. Maybe this was simply my unconscious mind picking up on small cues that were imperceptible to my conscious mind, but the accuracy was uncanny. Although predicting health problems for someone with lead poisoning is hardly extraordinary. I thought the presence of Mawar's mother and Bob was a forewarning of a problem I had with my insurance company, which is probably why I got it a little out of proportion. But then Mawar told me that her mother had reappeared to her in a dream, and she was so relieved. Shortly afterwards, it was apparent to Mawar and I that she was now cured, although still not to anyone else. Indeed, as Mawar's mother appeared to her more and more, she recovered, and it was now further apparent to me than to anyone else. I was also reminded that about 8 months previous me, Mawar had dreamt that a man was trying to poison her. She kept thwarting him to move to higher ground, but when he told her that if he couldn't kill her, he would call me. But she told him that she would kill him first. Well, we were both poisoned and have escaped it by moving halfway up a mountain in Gunung Kidul. At the same time, my own mother seemed to become important once more. When Mawar was at her worst, my mother was in hospital having a stroke. Mawar spoke to me as my mother, and I promised to visit her as soon as I could, which means after I get my passport back from immigration and can find a cheap flight. My mother promised not to die until Mawar had recovered. But as Mawar's mother had appeared, saying that Mawar is cured, my mother is now reappearing to Mawar. Mawar's love for my mother kept increasing, and I really do need to apologise for my lead-induced short temper. When my mother was discharged from hospital, she developed a bad cough, which doesn't seem to want to go away. Whilst my father found a solution to their lack of care and put his name down on rented sheltered accommodation, my mother was incensed. She wants to stay put with her memories around her. My father had to back down, and I suspect, despite having been threatening to die for over 10 years, my mother finally knows her time has nearly come. You see, despite discounting all that I have learned over the last year as lead poisoning, I cling on to the insights into death that I was given. After all, what else is there to believe? It was great to have wee Datty with us. not least as it was some 10 weeks since Mawar had last seen her daughter. Whilst Widati was with us, it was Mawar's 42nd birthday, and having only eaten fresh but repetitious Javanese overcooked food for 3 months, she wanted Western fast food. So we went to Jogja to get to a Pizza Hut pizza and some donuts, both of which were awful, but provided Mawar with a break from the monotony of her healthy diet. Widati searched the internet for trendy restaurants around Jogja and came up with an Arabic restaurant which we decided on, despite Budde's protests, not least as Mawar and I love Arabic food. When we arrived, it certainly was trendy, but not really Arabic, more Javanese food with what someone felt was an Arabic twist. But very inexpensive, especially after Pizza Hut, which is not a cheap option in Indonesia. Although overall it was a nice but not perfect day, not least as I think Mawar and I became dehydrated and tired, which brought on some of our symptoms. I needed to get back to Jakarta to sort my residence and transfer money around, whilst Widati also needed to get back too. Actually, why did she need to get back? So we booked tickets on the night bus, which Widati was rather impressed by. But before we left, we visited Mawar's mother's grave. I could feel her presence, but nothing like as strongly as I once had. As we left, Mawar said that she was no longer jealous of me being in Jakarta, not even of me and Limar, whom she was always jealous about, despite me not finding Limar even slightly attractive. I will let you into a secret about Limar. When she stays with her Western boyfriends in a hotel, she wears bed socks as she finds the air conditioning too cold. Yeah, you know exactly what I mean, don't you? As Mawar explained, you're a Muslim now, and I believe adultery is haram, and so possibly too are bed socks. Really, from our turmoil, we have gained so much incredible virtue, and it is having spent 10 years suspicious of each other. Now, Mawar and I have complete trust in each other. Years later, I discovered that bed socks increase a woman's chances of an orgasm by nearly a third, although I have no idea what to make of this. Almost as an epitaph, Limar sent Mawar a message to say that she was ending their 15-year friendship, a friendship that included Limar staying in our home for months on end, even sleeping in our bed with Mawar when I was away, not unusual to Indonesians. Limar had visited one of her dukans, who told her that she would become like Mawar, so she could not continue to see her. In many respects, this summarises the ignorance and prejudice which characterise society in Indonesia. Whilst not taking anything away from this argument, could there be more to it than has happened? If you remember, Putri told us that Limar had used black magic against us, and there is a belief that black magic gets returned to the sender. Was this the real reason for Mawar's message? Whatever, Mawar had a little cry, but after so much heartbreak, it just floated on the top of everything else, although it did set back Mawar's recovery by another month, hitting me with another months of care and medication to pay for, assuming that we can expect a recovery. I slept reasonably well on the night bus, but not as well as Widati, whose main opposition to it was her inability to sleep on the winding roads, but she did so soundly. We arrived very late as a result of waiting 2 hours, appropriately around Watis, although it's pronounced Watis in Bahasa, it's spelt Waits in English, for some passengers from Jogja, who I think said that they wanted to go to Bogor. Sorting out their belief that the South Jakarta bus should go on to Bogor took another hour in Bekasi, so it was 6 in the morning before we arrived at Lebak Bulus. Despite sleeping well, for my first 3 nights at our house, I slept an average of 12 hours each night, but felt remarkably well and happy. Maybe it was also the relief of not constantly looking after Mawar, albeit that this was exactly what I wanted to be doing. What I do know is that for serious impact, insomnia may be the most destructive part of lead poisoning. After a year of insomnia, one loses oneself and becomes almost ghost-like in appearance and thinking. Unlike my last visit to Jakarta, everything seemed to be going well. I visited Mawar's cost and now emptied her furnishings by Titi and her niece. I found a stone from a ring that I had loved and lost. Everyone made a big fuss at me at Mashola. I really do miss them all so very much. I went to Block M to visit Pa Day and Pa Haji, who I was happy to see. I didn't go to the Mashola near our home, but did go to the Muhammadiyah Masjid, but mostly pray at home now. It was also nice spending time with Widati. Despite her locking me out all day, I only went out to the nearby Japanese supermarket, and she turned the key in the door and went back to bed. For 2 hours I tried to wake her and break down the door, but she never bothered to get up and investigate the noise. Months later, this was to repeat itself, both with Mas Pradipta and Titi's niece. Maybe a part of my positive mood was that I had misplaced my passport and residence letter, which of course I needed for my new application. I had them with them on my last day in Jakarta when calling the phone company about the registration. And instead of bringing them with me as I intended, I put them back where I normally keep them. Exactly the sort of problems that memory loss from lead poisoning creates, especially when exacerbated by inadequate systems for registering one phone. In fact, exactly the sort of problems that have plagued me for some 5 years. When my partner threw me out of our home and I moved into my former office, I misplaced so many things. It was always the important things that I had put somewhere safe. Where I found my passport, I also found an extra $1,300 that I'd been unaware of. Then when I opened my computer and checked my bank account, yes, there were recurring irritations, but I was also $30,000 better off than I had thought I was, going a long way to putting back the money I had lost over the last year. There are simple reasons for me underestimating my finances, but I cannot discount the depression, confusion and resignation which comes with lead poisoning. Although Pa Angabaya still has some clothing of Mawar's, I am no longer anxious to see him, nor to get them back. I'm not frightened of him, but I do not want to seek confrontation. The same is true of Pa Erte and Yuni, who I'm bound to bump into. In fact, I spotted Yuni outside our home using cleaning fluid I presumed contained soil from the grave, whilst his back was to me, and he will also have nothing noticed me leaving the house. But when I returned, the fluid was all over the incline leading up to our gate. So he is either determined to frighten me, which I no longer am, not one bit, or he really does believe in black magic. Maybe I will never know. As I say, my thinking is becoming increasingly clear, and I've been contemplating going to the Mashola near our house. You see, I have realised that I only truly forgiven people and moved on when I can do this. But I have to say, there is still some residual bitterness within me. Maybe I should make a point of going with Tukun Jahid, the tailor who's made some wonderful clothing for me, from coarse check cotton cloth, so coarse it's like linen, from Claton, but bought in the Pasar at Ardesa. Tukun Jahid is a recent Pahaji and a lovely man. If we went with him, I could certainly hold my head up high. Thinking of it came to me that maybe the real reason for getting me to the Mashola and seeming to befriend me was largely to divide me from Mawar. Yes, it was useful in getting information from me, possibly a conduit for getting poisoned food into our house, but the main purpose was to divide me from Mawar. So they do they have a duty to split beautiful Indonesian women from their foreign boy husbands? Do Omuni and Paerte really want my wife, or is it simply that without me they think it would be easier to take our house? Or is splitting us up just a part of them destroying us, no more than that? Whatever, I need to move on, and that includes praying at the Mashola. Just as I have realised that my Dukan brother is a naughty half-wit who deserves my pity, so too does Paerte. But Omuni and Paangabaya really are much more calculating, even ruthless in their determination to destroy my life. Is this due to their own lead toxicity, as I have indicated? It's entirely possible. But just as when I believe Paerte to be possessed, they still have free will and have chosen their actions. But it's not for me to judge anyone, not Paangabaya, Omuni, Paerte, nor my Dukan brother. That is Allah's realm, and so for me to judge them is to behave godlike. Yes, I may judge their actions like Paangabaya giving us lead acetate, but I have no idea what he is truly like as a person, no idea how he treats his wife and children. The same is true of the public figures I have mentioned. I really know so little about them. How can I possibly judge them as people? I really must learn to keep my own counsel. Yes, I am a Muslim now. Did Allah send Omuni and Paangabaya to punish me? Or was it just misfortune? Well, I neither know nor care. I am not being flippant, but what I have learnt is that Allah will judge me on what I have done and my intentions, and not what others have done to me. Allah judges our intentions, as it is these intentions which create the actions that are good and bad intentions can result in the same action. We're all a part of a living entity. To hate somebody is to hate God and to hate yourself. So to seek revenge fills you with hate, and you hate yourself. So from now on, it is all about how I lead what is the rest of my life, which is undoubtedly shortened. I say shortened, but my newfound faith and prayers will actually extend my life, a little reported phenomenon, but especially true amongst males. Yes, I repent for the things I have done in the past, but most important thing is what I do from now on. I do hope I never start drinking, smoking or committing adultery again, but I don't know if I have the inner strength to stop myself. I really do want to build a masjid and spiritual retreat in my home in Gorankidal for people who have suffered as we have. But maybe I will never get the money to do so now, and I'm uncertain about what we really suffered and how to help people in the same situation. But this is exactly the sort of dilemma which has stymied me all my life. I must do something, and do it with the best intentions, not procrastinate as I look for the perfect solution. So I have returned to my thoughts as a child, untarnished by the real world. Yes, it can be hard and unforgiving world out there, but stick to your principles and do your best. God cannot, and I believe will not. Well, that concludes this chapter from the Magic Sugar of Java. I do hope you liked it. I'm going to attempt to add another chapter every week. In order for you to be notified about it, please subscribe and hit the bell. In fact, I need subscribers and listeners to reach monetization. And I do want feedback, but I also want to stay true to my experiences. I really want to keep things real. So therefore, I don't want to alter the format too much. But above all, thank you for listening. Thank you so much.